The Cordillera region, located in the Philippines, is often referred to as the eighth wonder of the world. This structure of rice terraces, carved out of steep mountain terrain, has been in existence for over 2,000 years. No data exists on the land area covered by these rice terraces, but it has often been said that if placed end to end, they would encircle half the globe. The terrace ponds were made by leveling the mountain and then constructing a mud wall which was reinforced with rocks and clay. An irrigation system was also put in place to feed the terraces with water, which is essential for rice cultivation. Its beauty and ingenuity has enthralled anthropologists, explorers, tourists, and Filipinos from other regions. The government here has declared it a national landmark, while UNESCO placed several terraces here on the World Heritage List in 1995 in recognition of its outstanding universal value. But for all the admiration of these terraces, it did not prevent many of them from falling into disrepair. In the year 2000, it was estimated that 30% of the terraces in the region had been left to be reclaimed by the wild. The rice fields had been upstaged by a monetized economy. Formerly, these fields had mainly been for feeding the family, and there was no money to be made from its produce and no market developed for this rice. But in recent decades, the locals started to find that farming wasn't enough. They found themselves cash-strapped to pay for things like education, healthcare, and consumer goods. Houses made of straw were increasingly being replaced by those constructed with metal sheets, and the sheets cost money. In the days of their grandparents, wealth was measured by the number of rice fields one owned. Now, wealth was measured by cash. So many left for the cities in search of better fortunes. In one of the provinces in the Cordilleras known as Ifugao, more than half of the estimated 3 million people who used to live there are now found outside the province. And so rice fields maintained for more than 2,000 years grew wild again. Among those who left was Linda Bindadan, who bid farewell to the Batad Terraces where she grew up and moved to Manila at the age of 20. She was the only person in the family of 7 to leave. Linda had some trepidations at first, as this was a lone venture. But the money she was going to make would help sustain the rest of the family.
Ot nalimit lang si nga sini mumpayet, kihinlangan na nga sini na montoris guide, iya kumita. Ngamno si tawa nga sini an manalon niya. Mi
Linda worked as a sales girl in a department store for 3 years and then worked in a garment factory for the next 7 years. But when she had her first child and had to stay home to take care of her daughter, her husband's salary was not enough to pay for rent in Manila and feed the family. Linda came back to the Cordilleras region and started farming again. Life was hard, having to climb up and down the steep terraces 3 times a day. It's also backbreaking work, sifting through mud in search of pests, such as these snail eggs, which could destroy her crop. But Linda had no complaints. Here she didn't have to starve, wasn't pressured by her landlord, and most importantly, she could be with her daughter. Her husband worked in a mine away from the family between 2003 and 2006 to help pay the bills. And back then, the family only got together once a month. In 2006, Linda received an interesting proposition. An NGO called Rice Inc. was willing to buy her rice. Before that, her rice was only for subsistence. Not only did Linda receive cash, she also got about double the prevailing price for rice. This was possible because the NGO Rice Inc. was selling the produce in the United States, where consumers were willing to pay a premium for organic rice.
Oo, nakatulong. Yang orchi pasalamat. Tayo na imali. Ura kas ano ya, lumao nan sobraan in talom toyo balintun ilaon hiya. Ilao rice ing. Ta isupay ko hipumpayet tuwino usarontun o may score.
From the money made with the sale of the rice, they were able to build a house and afford running water and electricity. The family sleeps together in one bed, and meals are prepared using firewood over an open stove. It gets cold in here during winter, but at least there is always enough to eat. Rice from the annual harvest usually lasts the family the entire year, even after commercial sales. And Linda's husband no longer needs to work in a mine. Just upstairs, Linda has constructed a provision shop, initially selling only drinks, but now it stocks candy, biscuits, household products, and soft drinks. And it has become somewhat of a neighborhood hangout.
Masaya ako ngayong magsasaka kaysa noong sales lady ako. Kaya hindi ko nababalikan yung pagsi-sales lady dahil mas kontento pa ako ngayong magsasaka with my family. Tapos doon na namin nakukuha lahat ng aming mga pambili, panggamit, panggastos sa bahay at gamit sa school at saka itong konting puhunan ko sa tinda-tindahan. Kaya ngayon mas masaya ako dito sa aking pagsasaka with my families.
Rice Inc. helps over 500 farmers like Linda in the region sell their produce. Their efforts not only help to lift rural poverty, but it preserves the heritage and environment of the Cordilleras region. When farmers receive a fair price for their produce, they remain here to take care of their terraces instead of migrating to the cities. Helping farmers access overseas markets sounds like a simple solution, but it is actually no easy feat. The region, with its undulating terrain, has limited roads, making transportation a challenge. It is not uncommon to hike for hours, sometimes even days in some of the more remote areas to access the market. There is also a severe lack of educated professionals here who understand the workings of the international market economy. Vicky Garcia, the co-founder of Rice Inc., is herself from the capital city, Manila. She used to work in refugee camps, and though she is well versed in developmental work, helping farmers in inaccessible terrains was not part of her plans. After completing her master's degree in the United States, she was helping her classmate look for locals from the region to run Rice Inc. But they couldn't find anyone to rise to the challenge.
During the time that we were conducting our feasibility study, we have not identified anyone interested. There were many organizations, and I do not want to name names of these organizations, but we offered it to them. We offered it to them, but they seem to be that this is an impossible impossible dream, or it is an impossible activity, because number one, this is a subsistence farming. No one would have that volume. No one would be able to sell it to us. All of the impossibilities were narrated to us.
But Vicky didn't give up. She took the plan to the farmers and got an enthusiastic response. And since no local professionals wanted the job, the 50-year-old rolled up her sleeves and did it herself.
At this point in time, anyone who would like to be nearing their retirement age, all you want to do is to make your life a little less miserable or a little less difficult. But the more I go to my senior years, the more difficult it requires of me to do this job. I'm physically challenged by this job. This terrain in the Cordillera would require me to go down uphill and downhill and go through the far-flung villages, go where the farmers are. I have to hike for hours, and this is physically giving me difficulty. I have polio since my toddler years, and I never thought that I will be going this way. And now, that is the challenge. it hurts me after I hike and go to the villages, but I sort of like past that the stage of being in pain when I look at the farmers and how much impact it is that I'm able to do with them when I'm talking to them. Like I see their faces light whenever I'm showing them that there's an opportunity for you to see the vision, and when they catch the vision, it feels like, oh, I think it's worth it anyway for the sacrifices that I am doing. But on my own, I am really in pain each time I go, every 2 weeks, every month, on a regular basis for the last 5 years, doing this and trying to organize the farmers at the grassroots level.
Polio survivors often suffer muscle and tendon pain and acute overstresses in their joints. It is no different for Vicky, who has to grit her teeth as she climbs up and down to meet with the farmers. She is slated to undergo hip replacement surgery soon because of her work here. But the zesty 50-year-old is not taking it any slower till she achieves her vision of revitalizing rice farming in the Cordillera region. The farmers here have symbolically adopted her as a daughter of the soil. And now more than ever, Vicky is bonded to the preservation of this rich heritage of rice farming. Rice, the staple food of most Asians, is an extremely labor-intensive plant to grow. Seedlings are sown, then transplanted one by one to ensure equal spacing in the fields. Crop management includes weeding by hand, the repair of the irrigation system, and the fight against more than 30 different species of insects and animals, and more than 10 different types of plant diseases. Harvesting is also hard work, with hours spent under the scorching heat. Most farmers say they rarely get any rest days till harvest. Yet despite all the hard work, the output is unreliable. An entire crop can be destroyed by fungal infections or adverse weather conditions. And with climate change, farmers are increasingly faced with uncertainty. In 2010, it did not rain in Ifugao in northern Philippines for over 4 months. Cracked fields bear scars of what some village elders say is the worst drought in over 50 years. Desperate, the farmers turn to religion, praying to a Christian god and their local rice god Balor at the same time.
Yape man apo Diyos, tonglam tuan dasar di hinuhain mi, inilam apo Diyos di kasapulan di hinuhain mi, yanan hana ni apo Diyos ta iluwang muna ni tanong ni umakhi pisti, yan patin di pagi, ta tonhun apina, an waday arninyo, ang mamaki ami apo Diyos, an kapuhnaan homok mo, yagod kang mo, pari mahudan tawag ni an masipugan na an intanom ni tuah iilog mi, an umari ang mga daydayang hangadan mo. At apo Diyos, tongdom tundasal mo.
Balor is always depicted with folded arms to symbolize that he is watching over the rice farmers. But it seems Balor is powerless in the face of global warming. The lack of rain not only prevents certain varieties of the rice crop from growing, it also causes cracks in the rocks, leading to collapse of rice terraces. On the other hand, when rain arrives in torrents after a long drought, it enters directly into the deep cracks that have appeared, causing landslides such as the ones here, and claiming lives. While farmers were used to gentle rains consistently over the year before, they now often have to deal with extreme weather conditions. About 20 typhoons hit the Philippines annually, and local experts say wind speeds have increased over the past 30 years from 100 km/h storms to double that speed of late. In 2009, more than 700 people died, and at least 6 million were displaced, first by tropical storm Ketsana, which reached Manila on September 26, and then by Typhoon Palma, which encircled for a week over northern Luzon Island and inundated communities, roads, and fields in the country's breadbasket. Losses to agriculture are estimated at $400 million. Considering that the rice crop cycle happens about 2 times a year, or in higher altitudes only once, the destruction of the crops would wipe out farmers' income for an entire year. But it's only farmers who suffer. Rice accounts for more than 40% of the calorie consumption of most Asians. Poor people spend as much as 30 to 40% of their income on rice alone. If the price goes up when supplies come down, it's the poor who will suffer the most. Malnutrition is a problem in the Philippines, which is currently the largest rice importer in the world. A 2009 report from the United Nations Children's Fund estimated that around 3 million children in the Philippines are suffering from stunted growth because pregnant mums are undernourished and there isn't enough food to go around. PhilRice, a national agency, has been tasked to achieve self-sufficiency in rice for the country. And helping farmers deal with climate changes is an important aspect of its work.
If you trace the movements of typhoons and map them in a map, the Philippine map disappears because of the traces of the typhoons. We simply have to adapt to it. So in some instances, we will have to advise the farmers to maybe time their planting and harvesting during months where there are lesser typhoons. But technologically, we can develop varieties that can be harvested earlier. So maybe 100 days, 90 days, so that they can avoid the drought situation at the end of the planting season.
PhilRice has also developed local rice varieties that are flood resistant. Rice crops usually die after being fully submerged in water for more than 2 days, but international scientists have managed to identify a rice species in India which can withstand submergence. Scientists at the International Rice Research Institute have mapped the molecular markers of this variety. And PhilRice scientists then crossed these markers with local varieties through a process of introgression. With introgression, genes of the submergence-resistant rice species is incorporated into the gene pool of Filipino native species of rice. The result is flood-resistant rice, which suits the local growth environment. The costs of such seeds are similar to other certified seeds in the market, as the research is state-subsidized. PhilRice is also studying a drought-resistant variety, but it says the genetic markers of such varieties are more complex. Besides laboratory work, PhilRice also sends its officers to the fields to help farmers learn other forms of technology. Through the analysis of leaf color, for example, farmers like Robin Echenique know when exactly to apply fertilizers. In the past, farmers apply fertilizers at fixed intervals, but research demonstrates that the crop can lose up to 50% of the fertilizer applied due to improper time of application. The color of the leaves will demonstrate the plant's nitrogen need, and this simple technology increases yield and saves farmers money in fertilizer purchase. During the Green Revolution, a common fertilizer was also used in many farms. But scientists have found that soils differ greatly, and fertilizers should be more targeted to reduce fertilizer waste. So PhilRice has developed a simple soil testing kit, which costs about $6. Farmers mix their soils and put in 7 different pots with different fertilizer formulations. Seedlings are transplanted, and 45 days later, the pot with the least growth would demonstrate what nutrient the soil is deficient in. In this case, the soil is short of sulfur and nitrogen. So instead of buying the standard fertilizer mix, Robin can cut costs and buy just the fertilizers he needs. Through these kinds of technologies, among others, Robin has managed to increase his yield substantially. In 2008, he harvested 8,900 kilograms of rice. In 2009, after attending a farmer field school organized by Phil Rice, he harvested about 12,500 kilograms. That's a 40% increase, and with the additional money, Robin was able to purchase land for building his own home. His is the only concrete house in his village.
Ang mga technologies na nitiro ng mga nag-Philrice ay malaking bagay sa mga magsasaka dahil naiaangat ang kabuhayan ng mga magsasaka dahil tumataas ang mga ani ng palay sa mga makabagong teknolohiya ng pagsasaka na itinuturo ng Philrice.
More money also translates into village luxuries like a fridge, television, and tasty side dishes for the entire family. During special occasions, the rental of karaoke machines are also a must for the entire village, so everyone can have a good time in this country, which loves old American ballads with a passion.
As you love me from the start, with every beat of your heart.
The success of farmers like Robin has implications beyond his own village. Many farmers complain of being caught in a poverty trap. With their small farm size, they are only able to feed their own families with little surplus for sale. But simple and cost-effective technology, such as better seeds and proper fertilization, is now allowing farmers to increase their yields. Currently, most farms have an average yield of around 3.8 tons of rice per hectare, which is less than half of the yield being achieved in experimental farms with the right technology, irrigation systems, and planting conditions applied. There is certainly plenty of room for improvement, but to do so requires government commitment. Besides developing new technologies, distributing quality seeds, and educating farmers, irrigation needs must also be addressed. But such infrastructural investment is costly, and the government is under intense pressure to cut the budget deficit. However, not investing in rice production could be even more costly for the government in the long run. In 2010, it was reported that the Philippines imported 2.45 million tons of rice, with rice trading around $500 per ton. That works out to over $1.2 billion. Money which can go a long way in this impoverished country. The Philippines is the largest importer of rice in the world. Memories of starvation and riots back in 2008, when rice prices reached a record $1,080 per ton, is still fresh in the minds of many. And this is what makes helping farmers like Robin and Linda all the more urgent. The Philippines has an ambitious target of self-sufficiency in rice by 2013. And it will need many more success stories of farmers to make that target a reality.